General Vexthor stood on the command deck of his flagship, watching the blue-green planet rotate slowly beneath them. Earth, the humans called it. Such a simple name for what should have been a simple conquest. The Kalari Empire had conquered 47 star systems in the past century. Each one followed the same pattern. The enemy would mass their forces, meet them in open battle, and after a few decisive engagements, surrender when faced with overwhelming firepower. It was civilized. It was predictable. It was how war had been fought across the galaxy for thousands of years. "Sir," his aide, Lieutenant Zex, approached with a datapad, "the human response to our ultimatum has arrived." Vexthor took the device, his 4 eyes scanning the message. His expression darkened with each line. "They refused to surrender?" he asked. "Not exactly, sir. Well, they say they accept our challenge, but they want to discuss terms of engagement." Vexthor's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Terms? We have the largest fleet in this sector. Their technology is centuries behind ours. What terms could they possibly want to discuss?" The answer came 3 hours later when a small human vessel approached under a white flag. Vexthor agreed to meet with their representative, curious about what desperate plea these primitives might offer. The human who materialized on his bridge was smaller than he expected. No impressive armor, no threatening weapons. Just a middle-aged female in a simple uniform, flanked by 2 guards who looked relaxed rather than intimidating. "General Vexthor," she said, offering what humans called a smile. "I'm Colonel Sarah Chen, speaking for Earth's Unified Defense Forces. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. State your terms quickly, human. My patience has limits." Chen nodded. "We propose a series of limited engagements rather than total warfare. Small unit actions, specific objectives. Winner takes all, but we minimize casualties on both sides." Vexthor stared at her. In all his years of conquest, no enemy had ever suggested limiting their own destruction. It was almost sporting. "You realize you will lose these engagements," he said. "Maybe," Chen replied, "but we'd like the chance to lose them properly." Something in her tone intrigued him. Against his better judgment, Vexthor found himself agreeing to her proposal. Perhaps it would be entertaining to watch these humans struggle against impossible odds with dignity. The first engagement was set for dawn on the planet's largest continent. A simple objective: capture and hold a strategic hilltop for 24 hours. Vexthor sent his best unit, 50 Kalari shock troopers with full combat gear and air support. The humans sent 20 soldiers. "Sir," Lieutenant Zex observed from the command center, "their numbers don't make sense. Are they sending their elite forces?" Vexthor studied the human soldiers through his tactical display. They looked ordinary. No enhanced armor, no exotic weapons, just standard projectile firearms and basic equipment. "Perhaps they know something we don't," he mused, though he couldn't imagine what. The battle began exactly as expected. The Kalari troops advanced up the hill in perfect formation, their energy shields shimmering in the morning light. The humans opened fire from concealed positions, but their primitive bullets simply bounced off the advanced armor. Within an hour, the Kalari had reached the summit and planted their banner. The humans retreated into the forest below, apparently accepting defeat. "As expected," Vexthor told his staff. "Begin preparations for the occupation of their primary cities." But the humans didn't surrender. They didn't even seem to consider the engagement over. Instead, they did something that baffled every military expert on the Kalari flagship. They changed the rules. Instead of massing for another frontal assault, the 20 human soldiers split into pairs and began what they called harassment operations. They struck supply lines, sabotaged equipment, and generally made life miserable for the Kalari troops holding the hill. When the Kalari sent patrols to hunt them down, the humans vanished like smoke. When the troops returned to their positions, they found their rations spoiled, their weapons jammed, and insulting graffiti spray-painted on their equipment. "What are they doing?" Zex asked, monitoring the tactical display. "This isn't warfare. This is vandalism." But Vexthor was beginning to understand. The humans weren't trying to win the engagement as he understood it. They were trying to make holding the objective so costly and frustrating that the Kalari would abandon it voluntarily. On the second day, the human harassment escalated. They poisoned the water supply to the hilltop. Not with anything lethal, just something that caused intense stomach discomfort. They used sonic devices to broadcast annoying sounds all night, preventing sleep. They even managed to hack into the Kalari communication systems and flood them with what appeared to be human music at maximum volume. "Sir," the commander of the hilltop position reported, "we're requesting permission to withdraw and flatten the entire area from orbit." "Denied," Vexthor replied, fascinated despite himself. "Continue holding your position." By the third day, things got creative. The humans had somehow acquired Kalari uniforms and were impersonating soldiers, giving false orders and creating confusion. They released indigenous wildlife into the Kalari camp, harmless but aggressive creatures that bit and clawed at anything that moved. Most bizarrely, they began what they called psychological warfare. They would call out to individual Kalari soldiers by name, asking about their families back home and whether they really thought this war was worth missing their children's graduation ceremonies. "How do they know Trooper Kextal's daughter is graduating next month?" Zex demanded. "They appear to have intercepted and decoded our personal communications," the intelligence officer reported. "But instead of using the information for military advantage, they're using it to make our soldiers homesick." Vexthor watched the tactical display with growing amazement. The humans were fighting a war unlike anything in his experience. They weren't just trying to kill the enemy, they were trying to demoralize them, frustrate them, and make them question why they were fighting in the first place. On the fourth day, the Kalari position on the hill was technically secure, but practically useless. The troops were exhausted, confused, and suffering from a dozen minor ailments that sapped their effectiveness. Morale was at rock bottom, and the humans hadn't fired a single shot in anger since the first day. "Request permission to negotiate," Colonel Chen's voice came through the communications array. "We believe we've demonstrated our point." Vexthor agreed to another meeting, this time on the planet's surface. He found Chen waiting in a temporary shelter at the base of the contested hill, looking completely relaxed. "Satisfied with your victory, human?" Chen raised an eyebrow. "Our victory? General, your forces still hold the hill? You won the engagement exactly as we agreed." "Then why do you seem pleased?" "Because we proved something important," Chen replied. "We proved that holding territory isn't the same as controlling it. Your soldiers may have the high ground, but they're miserable, demoralized, and ready to go home. Is that really a victory?" Vexthor considered this. "What is your point?" "Our point is that war isn't just about firepower and tactics. It's about will. And humans have a very strong will, General. We don't fight fair, we don't follow conventional rules, and we absolutely refuse to make things easy for our enemies." She gestured toward the hill. "You could flatten this entire continent from orbit, but then you'd rule over a wasteland. You could crush our armies in open battle, but then you'd face 1,000 years of the kind of harassment you've experienced this week." Vexthor felt a chill run down his spine. "You're suggesting that conquest would be difficult." "I'm suggesting that conquering humanity would be the easy part," Chen said quietly. "Ruling us would be impossible." The general stared at the human female, seeing her clearly for the first time. Not a primitive savage, but a representative of a species that understood war in ways his people had never considered. "You fight without honor," he said finally. "We fight to win," Chen corrected. "And when we can't win, We fight to make sure you can't either. That's what you're really up against, General. Not our armies or our weapons, but our refusal to accept defeat gracefully. As Vex Thor returned to his ship that evening, he found himself facing an uncomfortable truth. The Kalari Empire had conquered 47 star systems by following the accepted rules of galactic warfare. But the humans didn't seem to know those rules existed, and that, he was beginning to realize, might make all the difference. 3 weeks after the Hilltop incident, Vex Thor received an unexpected communication from the Kalari High Command. Emperor Mexvor himself appeared on the holographic display, his ancient features creased with displeasure. General, your conquest of Earth is taking longer than anticipated. Your Majesty, the situation here is complex. Complex. The Emperor's voice carried a dangerous edge. You have the most advanced fleet in the Empire facing a species that has barely achieved interstellar travel. What could possibly be complex about this? Vex Thor chose his words carefully. The humans fight differently than any species we've encountered. They don't follow standard military doctrine. Then adapt your tactics and crush them quickly. The High Command grows impatient. The transmission ended, leaving Vex Thor staring at the dark display. Adaptation was exactly what worried him. Every time they adjusted their approach, the humans seemed to anticipate it and respond with something even more unexpected. His thoughts were interrupted by Lieutenant Zex rushing onto the bridge. Sir, we have a problem. 3 of our supply convoys have been attacked in the past hour. Attacked by what? Our scouts reported no human military presence in those sectors. That's just it, sir. The attackers weren't military. According to the convoy commanders, they were attacked by human civilians. Vex Thor's mandibles clicked in confusion. Civilians? That's impossible. Non-combatants don't engage military forces. The first convoy was hit by what appeared to be farmers. They used modified agricultural equipment, tractors with improvised armor and mining explosives. The second convoy was attacked by human children. Children. Vex Thor's voice rose in disbelief. The convoy commander reports that approximately 30 human juveniles, some no older than 12 Earth years, disabled 2 of his transport vehicles using toys. Toys? Zex consulted his data pad. Remote-controlled aircraft, apparently designed for recreation. They modified them to carry small explosive charges and flew them directly into the convoy's sensor arrays, blinding the vehicles long enough for adult humans to attack with conventional weapons. Vex Thor felt a strange mixture of admiration and horror. And the third convoy? Elderly humans, sir. They set up what appears to be a social gathering in the convoy's path and refused to move. So the convoy went around them? That was the plan, sir. But when they tried to navigate around the gathering, they discovered the elderly humans had spent 3 days digging concealed holes throughout the area. Every vehicle fell into carefully constructed traps. Vex Thor stared out at the planet below, trying to process this information. You're telling me that farmers, children, and elderly non-combatants successfully ambushed 3 of our military convoys? Yes, sir. And that's not the strangest part. There's more? Zex looked uncomfortable. After each attack, the humans offered medical aid to our wounded soldiers. They also provided food and drink to our forces while they waited for rescue. They attacked our soldiers and then fed them? The convoy commanders report that the human children sang songs for the wounded while they waited for medical evacuation. The elderly humans gave our troops what they called care packages with food from their own families. Vex Thor sat down heavily in his command chair. This was beyond anything in his military experience. Have you ever heard of an enemy that attacks you and then offers hospitality? No, sir. It's not in any tactical manual. Because it doesn't make sense, Vex Thor muttered. Unless... Sir? Unless they're not fighting us as enemies? They're fighting us as... What's the human word? Neighbors? They attack us when we threaten them, but they care for us when we're hurt. This realization led to an even more disturbing question. How do you defeat an enemy that doesn't hate you? The answer came the next day when Colonel Chen requested another meeting. This time she arrived not alone, but accompanied by a dozen humans of various ages and professions. "General," she said, "I'd like you to meet some of Earth's people." She gestured to an elderly man with kind eyes. "This is Dr. Marcus Webb. He's spent his career treating wounded soldiers from dozens of conflicts. Yesterday, he volunteered to provide medical care to your injured troops." Next, she indicated a young woman barely out of her teens. "Sarah Kim, engineering student. She designed the trap system that disabled your third convoy. She's also been working on improvements to your transport vehicles. She noticed some design flaws that make them vulnerable to simple attacks." A middle-aged man stepped forward. "Tom Rodriguez, farmer. I led yesterday's attack on your first convoy. I also brought vegetables from my farm for your troops. I figured they might be getting tired of military rations." Vexthor looked from one human to another, trying to understand what he was seeing. "You attack our forces and then offer to help them?" Dr. Webb spoke up. "General, we don't want to hurt anyone. We just want you to leave our world alone. But if you insist on staying, we're going to make it as difficult as possible for you." "While also making sure no one dies unnecessarily," Sarah Kim added. "We studied your species biology. We know what foods you can eat, what medical care you need. Why would we let anyone suffer when we can prevent it?" Tom Rodriguez nodded. "My grandfather fought in 3 wars. He always said the goal wasn't to kill the enemy. It was to stop them from fighting. Dead soldiers can't change their minds and go home. Living soldiers can." Vexthor felt his understanding of warfare shifting again. "You're trying to convince our soldiers to leave?" "Among other things," Chen said. "Tell me, General, what happens when a Kalari soldier is captured? They are held according to the Galactic Convention on Prisoners of War." "And what happens to human soldiers you capture?" Vexthor paused. "We haven't captured any." "That's because we don't let ourselves get captured," Chen explained. "But more importantly, what happens when we capture your soldiers?" The general considered this. According to his reports, 17 Kalari soldiers had been captured in various skirmishes. All had been returned within days, unharmed and often in better condition than when they were captured. "You release them," he said slowly. "We release them after they've spent time with human families," Chen corrected. "They've eaten our food, played with our children, learned about our culture. Do you know what effect that has?" Vexthor didn't answer, but he suspected he knew. Several returned soldiers had submitted requests for reassignment away from Earth. Others had begun asking uncomfortable questions about the necessity of the invasion. "You're conducting warfare against our morale," he said. "We're conducting warfare against the idea that we're your enemies," Sarah Kim said. "It's hard to fight someone once you realize they're just people trying to protect their homes." Dr. Webb stepped closer. "General, may I ask you something personal?" Vexthor nodded warily. "Do you have family back on your homeworld?" "I have 2 offspring and a mate. What do they think about this war?" The question hit Vexthor unexpectedly. His mate Telex had grown increasingly distant in their communications. His children asked why he was fighting people who had never threatened their world. They want me to come home," he admitted. "Of course they do," Dr. Webb said gently. "Just like our families want us to be safe. That's not weakness, General. That's love." Tom Rodriguez spoke up. "My son is about the same age as your youngest, I think. He asks me every day why the Sky people want to hurt us. I tell him they don't want to hurt us. They're just scared and confused. Was I wrong?" Vexthor looked at these humans. These people who had spent the morning attacking his forces and the afternoon offering to cook dinner for them, and realized something profound. They weren't fighting a war. They were having an argument. And they were determined to keep having that argument until he either listened to their point of view or got tired of fighting and went home. "What do you want from us?" he asked finally. "We want you to understand that you can't conquer people who refuse to be conquered," Chen said. "You can occupy our territory, but you can't occupy our hearts and minds. You can defeat our armies, but you can't defeat our spirit." She gestured toward the planet below. "Every human down there, 7 billion of them, has decided that you're not welcome here. Not because they hate you, but because this is their home. How long do you think you can fight 7 billion people who have nothing to lose and infinite creativity?" "You could destroy us from orbit," Sarah Kim pointed out. "But then you'd rule over a dead world. You could try to suppress us with force, but we'll just find new ways to resist. We're very good at finding new ways to resist." Dr. Webb nodded. "We've had thousands of years of practice fighting impossible odds. We've survived ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and wars. We're excellent at adapting and surviving." Tom Rodriguez smiled. "Plus, we're stubborn. Really stubborn." As Vexthor returned to his ship that evening, he found a message waiting from his mate, Tlex. She had heard about his assignment from mutual friends and wanted to express her concerns. The crisis came suddenly, as crises often do. Vexthor was reviewing intelligence reports when alarm klaxons began blaring throughout the flagship. Lieutenant Zex burst onto the bridge, his normal composure completely shattered. "Sir, we have a massive problem. The humans have somehow infiltrated our entire fleet." "Impossible. Our security systems would have detected any boarding attempts." "They didn't board our ships, sir. They infiltrated our communications network." Vexthor stared at his aide. "To what end?" "They've been talking to our soldiers. All of them. For weeks." The general felt ice forming in his veins. "Explain." Zex activated the main display. "They created fake personal communication channels that appeared to be from our soldiers' families. But instead of families, the messages were coming from humans pretending to be Kalari civilians." "Pretending?" "Sir, they studied our psychology, our family structures, our cultural values. They created fictional Kalari characters who began corresponding with our troops, asking about their well-being, expressing concern about the war, sharing news from home." Vexthor watched in horrified fascination as Zex brought up sample conversations. Human-created fictional Kalari had been writing to his soldiers about everything from crop harvests to family celebrations, always with an underlying tone of concern about the unnecessary war. "How many of our troops were affected?" "All of them, sir. Every single soldier in the fleet has been receiving these fake personal messages for 3 weeks." "And they believed they were real?" "The humans were incredibly thorough. They created entire fictional Kalari communities, complete with local news, weather reports, and social events. Our soldiers thought they were getting updates from their home villages." Vexthor felt his world tilting. "What was the purpose?" "To make them homesick, sir. To make them question why they're here fighting instead of home with their families. The psychological effect has been devastating." As if summoned by their conversation, communications from across the fleet began flooding in. Ship commanders reporting decreased morale, requests for reassignment, and even several cases of soldiers asking to speak with the human prisoners to understand their perspective better. "There's more, sir," Zex said reluctantly. "The humans didn't just create fake family members, they created fake Kalari military experts who began questioning the strategic wisdom of this invasion." "What do you mean?" "Fictional Kalari generals and strategists, supposedly retired, began writing analytical pieces about the costs of occupying Earth versus the benefits. They made compelling arguments that the resources required to hold this world would bankrupt the Empire." Vexthor read over the reports with growing amazement. The humans had created an entire shadow Kalari society that served as a mirror to their own, reflecting back all their doubts and concerns about the invasion. "Sir," Zex continued, "there's a request from Colonel Chen for an immediate meeting. She says it's urgent." "Of course it is," Vexthor muttered. "Bring her up." When Chen materialized on the bridge 20 minutes later, she was accompanied by someone unexpected, a Kalari soldier in full uniform. "General Vexthor," she said formally, "I'd like you to meet someone." The Kalari soldier stepped forward and saluted. "Captain Dexmore, sir. I was captured 3 days ago during the supply convoy incident." Vexthor returned the salute automatically, then paused. "Captain, you were reported as missing in action, presumed dead." "I was captured, sir. The humans have been educating me." "Educating you about what?" Dexmore glanced at Chen, who nodded encouragingly. "About themselves, sir. About why they fight. About what they're really defending." Chen stepped forward. "General, we've brought Captain Dexmore here because he asked to speak with you. We thought you should hear what he's learned." Vexthor studied his officer. Dexmore looked healthy, uninjured, and surprisingly calm for someone who had been held prisoner. "Speak freely, Captain." "Sir, the humans didn't interrogate me or try to extract military information. Instead, they invited me to live with one of their families for 3 days." "Live with them?" "Yes, sir. I stayed in the home of a human family. Parents, children, grandparents. I helped with their daily tasks, ate meals with them, played with their offspring. They treated me like a guest." Vexthor felt a familiar sense of unreality settling over him. "And? Sir, they're not soldiers. I mean, some of them are, but mostly they're just people living their lives. The male parent works in what they call information technology. The female parent teaches children. Their offspring attend educational institutions and play recreational games." "Your point, Captain?" Dexmore took a breath. "They're exactly like my family back home, sir. The only difference is that we're trying to conquer them." The bridge fell silent. Chen watched the exchange without speaking, letting the Kalari soldier make his own point. "The youngest child," Dexmore continued, "asked me why we wanted to take their planet. I tried to explain about imperial expansion and resource acquisition. She listened very carefully, then asked me if I would like it if strangers came to my home and tried to take it away from my family." Vexthor felt something cracking inside his chest. "What did you tell her?" "I told her no, sir. I wouldn't like that at all." Chen finally spoke. "Captain Dexmore has asked to return to his unit to share his experiences with his fellow soldiers. We're hoping you'll allow that." "Why?" Vexthor asked. "What purpose would that serve?" "Because," Dexmore said quietly, "they deserve to know what we're really fighting for, and more importantly, what we're fighting against." The general turned to Chen. "This is what you call warfare? Inviting enemy soldiers to dinner with your families?" "This is what we call being human," Chen replied. "We believe that most conflicts come from misunderstanding. People fight when they see each other as enemies. But it's very difficult to see someone as an enemy once you've watched them help your child with homework. You're trying to convert our soldiers. We're trying to help them understand that this war serves no one's interests," Chen corrected. "Your soldiers don't want to be here. Our people don't want you here. The only ones who benefit are the politicians and military leaders who never have to do the actual fighting." She gestured toward the viewport showing Earth below. "General, in the past month, you've lost more soldiers to homesickness and requests for reassignment than to actual combat. Your supply lines are constantly disrupted, not by our military, but by farmers and shopkeepers and children. Your troops spend more time providing medical aid to human civilians than fighting them." "This isn't war," Vexthor said slowly. This is what happens when you try to conquer people who refuse to hate you," Chen finished. "We've turned your invasion into a cultural exchange program. Your soldiers are learning about us, and we're learning about them. The more they know about us, the less willing they are to fight us." Captain Dexmore nodded. "Sir, I've spoken with many of our troops. Most of them joined the military to defend the Kalari Empire, not to attack innocent civilians. This war doesn't feel like defense to them." Vex Thor's communicator chimed. Emperor Mexivor's image appeared, his expression thunderous. "General, I'm receiving disturbing reports about the morale of your forces. What is your status?" Vex Thor looked at Chen, then at Dexmore, then at his crew who were all listening intently. "Your Majesty, the human resistance has proven more effective than anticipated. Then use overwhelming force. Destroy their major cities and accept their surrender." "Sir, I don't believe they will surrender." "Then destroy them all and colonize the planet with our own people." The bridge fell silent. Chen didn't speak, but Vex Thor could see the sadness in her eyes. Not fear. Sadness. As if she was disappointed but not surprised. "Your Majesty," Vex Thor said slowly, "I request permission to negotiate a withdrawal." "Withdrawal?" The Emperor's voice rose to dangerous levels. "You have the finest fleet in the Empire facing primitive humans, and you want to withdraw?" "Yes, sir. I believe continued occupation of this world would be counterproductive." "Explain yourself." Vex Thor looked around his bridge, seeing his crew in a new light. How many of them had children? How many missed their families? How many were beginning to question why they were fighting people who offered them medical care and home-cooked meals? "Your Majesty, the humans have weaponized compassion. They fight us not with hatred, but with kindness. They attack our supply lines and then feed our wounded. They disable our equipment and then offer to repair it better than before. They capture our soldiers and then invite them home for dinner." "That makes no sense." "It makes perfect sense, sir. They've made it impossible for us to see them as enemies. And you can't conquer people who insist on treating you as neighbors." The Emperor stared at him. "You've gone soft, General. You're being manipulated by primitive psychology." "Perhaps, sir. But I've also realized something important. This war will never end. We can occupy their territory, but we can't occupy their hearts. And they have 7 billion hearts, all working together to make our lives as difficult and as guilty as possible." Chen stepped forward. "Your Majesty, if I may?" "You dare address the Emperor?" One of Vex Thor's officers gasped. "Let her speak," the Emperor said coldly. "Your Majesty, we don't want to be your enemies. We'd actually prefer to be your friends. But if you insist on being our enemies, we will make it the most frustrating, guilt-inducing, morally complicated experience of your lives." She smiled, that peculiar human expression. "We're very good at making friends with people who start out trying to hurt us. Ask Captain Dexmore." The Emperor stared at the human for a long moment, then at Vex Thor, then at the bridge crew who were all nodding in agreement. "General, you have 48 hours to achieve total victory or begin withdrawal." The transmission ended. Vex Thor turned to Chen. "Well, Colonel, it appears you've won." "Have we?" Chen asked. "Or have we all won?" 3 days later, the Kalari fleet departed Earth's system, but they didn't leave alone. Captain Dexmore and 17 other Kalari soldiers requested to remain behind as cultural ambassadors. The humans, predictably, welcomed them with open arms. 6 months later, Vex Thor received a letter from Dexmore. The former captain had married a human woman and was expecting his first child. He had also established the first Kalari human cultural exchange program. "General," the letter read, "you should visit Earth sometime, not as a conqueror, but as a tourist. These humans make excellent friends once you stop trying to fight them." Vex Thor filed the letter carefully and began composing his official report on the failed invasion of Earth. He titled it, "Why Humanity Cannot Be Conquered: A Study in Weaponized Compassion." The report would eventually become required reading at the Kalari Military Academy, not as a study in failure, but as a study in the most effective form of warfare ever encountered, the kind that turned enemies into friends and made conquest not just difficult, but morally impossible. Years later, Earth would become one of the Kalari Empire's most valued allies, but that was a different story entirely. "I know you're a good soldier," her recorded message said, "but I also know you're a good person. Don't let this war change that. Come home to us safely." For the first time since arriving at Earth, Vex Thor wondered if maybe that was exactly what he should do.